today have Matt Rawlins. Matt is a drummer at Vintage242 Aqua. What stood out for me when the first time I actually went on stage, ready to play with the team, was Matt was quick to play. I clearly remember we were all on stage and just chatting and then getting ready to play. But Matt, and I think there was something going on with the worship team. Somebody was telling us a story. Matt was the only one or the first one to say, "Let's pray," and he started playing. So that stood out to me. That Matt was a solid guy. Well, to Matt, uh, welcome. Tell us about you, who you are, where you're from.
Well, first, thank you for having me and thinking of me for this. I've been playing drums for about as long as I can remember. Um, it, my brothers were. I'm the middle of three boys, and my brothers were all into sports, and I just did not care. And just in an effort to get me to find an extracurricular activity, um, my parents bought me a drum set, and I was absolutely enamored. Nobody in my family really had any history with music or playing instruments, um, but that sparked a love that has continued on my entire adult life, and I'm passing on to my children. Um, so I basically taught myself how to play drums for the first couple of years, and then I got into middle school band and high school band, and was a marching musician the entire time. My family's involved in church, and I think the first time I played in front of a group of people at a church, I was 12 years old with a really terrible, cheap Roland electric kit. Um, and yeah, I really can do this. And I've been playing in churches ever since. A little bit of history with me. I went to college for 2 years after high school, and I marched in a college marching band. And then I woke up one day and I was like, I do not want to be a band director. And that was what I was. My degree was for, so what I was pursuing. And I woke up and I said, I don't want to be a band director. I want to play music. I want to perform and be out there. And I quit school, and I had an opportunity to go on the road with a gospel singer.
Oh, who was that?
His name was Eddie James. It was Eddie James Ministries.
Okay.
Um, and I toured with him um, on and off for about a year and a half, 2 years. But during my travels with him is how I got introduced to IHOP in Kansas City. I didn't know what it was at the time. We're talking. This was 2007 and 2008. So at the time, IHOP was still relatively a new concept, um, and I got introduced to the 24/7 prayer room. I got uh, invited to come play a couple of worship sets. Met some incredible people, and when Eddie James wanted to go back out on the road, I decided to stay in Kansas City for another year, and I played two or three worship sets, 2 hours each per week in the prayer room for about a year. Um, and I wasn't. They had some incredible musicians. I wasn't really on par with most of them, so I got stuck in the a lot of the 2 a.m. Worship sets. But it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I learned how to um, follow along as a drummer and how to move the music along dynamically as a drummer. Um, so that's kind of how I've introduced into worship music. Um, After my season at IHOP ended, I went on the road with a contemporary Christian group. We were writing some original music. We were mostly doing um, worship covers and playing at Disciple Nows and Christian camps and things like that. We were called Living Anthem out of uh, Carrollton, Georgia. It was definitely rock influenced.
Okay.
Kind of, we did a lot of stuff alongside like 10th Avenue North, that kind of feel. Mid 2000s, 2010s, um, Christian rock, that kind of a feel. Um, the whole time that Living Anthem is going on, whenever we're not traveling, I was, going around to different churches every week, um, and I was playing in a different place. I probably had a rotation of 10 or 11 churches that I floated through. Fast forward, I get married. I've got a new career outside of music, and my wife, we dated. She lived out of state. She lived in Richmond, Virginia, and so we dated for 2 years before we got married. Moved down here to the Metro Atlanta area, and she was really wanting to get involved in a home church. Every time I would go play somewhere else, she would be with me, but we weren't rooted anywhere, and so she started praying. I started getting really convicted that church was becoming a job.
Yeah.
Um, and I took about a year hiatus from playing anywhere, and we found the church we're at now, Vintage242. And when the Lord finally released me to start playing, and I told the worship leader I'm good to start playing. She knew me the from before. Um, Asked me several times, "Hey, you ready to play?" And kept telling her, "No, I need to sit and listen to the Lord for a season." And when I finally felt released to start playing worship music again, start leading a team again, um, I I made a promise to the Lord that I would not pursue leading worship for money, whatever that looked like. I've played gigs for money. I've been offered to play, but I'm not pursuing it as a um, financial gain. And I view my playing drums and contribution to worship as uh, an extension of tithe and service to the church and the community.
Yeah.
I'm freely giving my time and talents, and not asking for anything in return. And I feel a lot of freedom. And we've vintage now for 13 years and raising our family here, and um, absolutely love it. It's a segue into, I guess, the church. It's a
Before
small.
we do that, like, what did you? I was talking about the 2 hour set list at IHOP, right?
Yeah, sure.
What did you learn from? I'm pretty sure the first 30 minutes is just playing. It's the it's the it's the hour and 30 after that that is the real teacher, right? You learn a lot from that, And I think sometimes um, just for like Sundays at church does not allow for. It's not a stage where you learn as a musician and grow.
Mhm.
As you mentioned, if you're playing all night, you're playing the hotel gigs, you play that, your first 30 minutes is nerves. Unless you have like multiple services at a church, the first service is like the first 30 minutes at a hotel gig or a bar gig, and the second, third, fourth service is when you're actually playing and you've learned and you've like warmed up. So
Mhm.
what were some things that you learned that from a 2 hour set list that's still helpful today?
Um, I learned to listen and feel the room.
Yeah,
Um, one of my, I guess, strengths as a drummer is the ability to play dynamically, and to like feel the atmosphere in the room, and kind of bring the band along to where that's leading. Um, Everything at IHOP was so Holy Spirit driven.
Yeah.
And we would have a meeting 10 minutes before it was our turn to take over the worship. We would have an idea of 4 or 5 songs that we would want to hit, but the transitions between how long they were going to go, how often we went back to the chorus or the bridge, none of that was discussed. It was all feel. And back then we didn't use any talkback mics. There was
Yeah.
not um, a music director calling everything. And there were a lot of times that I, messed up. I felt like the song was going somewhere that the
Yeah.
worship leader didn't want it to go, and I messed up. So just learning to um, read body language of the other musicians. Um, I love being able to look out at the people worshiping, and feel where the spirit's leading.
Yeah.
And I've I used that time to yeah, I'm a drummer when I'm at home practicing. I'm a drummer when I get a random gig somewhere else or do a recording session for a buddy of mine. Um, I'm a worshiper first on Sunday mornings. Um, I'm doing that through playing music, but I am a worshiper first, and I feel so much freedom and release and crying out to the Lord from behind the drums that it doesn't feel like I'm playing.
Yeah. Something, I think, um, like stuff like body language and also reading, becoming a great reader. That applies to anything, right? I
Mhm,
coach football as well, and I think successful people in sports are able to read the body language. Um, like I was teaching my daughter how to drive a car, right? And in India, every driver, every car, everybody walking, the cows, everything, the whole street has a body language. So when I drive in India, right, I'm just reading minute changes in speed and acceleration of braking because you're bumper to bumper at really, really fast, and you're reading this whole body language. Everything is sending out a signal, right?
mhm,
Whether it's intentional or not, So I think same thing with a band, and it's kind of a lost art because I think a lot of kids who, especially who grew up in church, and they sit on in church, and this is beautiful, and it's a beautiful thing, right? A kid sits in church, they see the worship band, they pick up a guitar, and now they're on the worship band,
mhm,
and if that's the cycle, I think sometimes if that band has not had like that experience of playing 8-hour gigs, they're not experiencing that body language unless it's a strong leader to coach, and I think that helps a band play better. And
mhm.
I'm sure, like at IHOP, like whoever was leading worship would just turn and a nod, or even just with vocal cues,
Yeah,
and everybody who has that experience, they can pick up on those minute things if you're listening to, right? And you can go where the leader wants you to go, and or you can stop when they want you to stop, and it's such a beautiful thing to just follow along and pick up those cues and pick up those guides, and when everybody around you can do that, I think um, uh, sometimes if the band miss lacks on that body language, those cues, it's a little tricky, and that's where tracks come in, which is okay. It's not a bad thing, but we miss out on that organic go where we want to go,
yeah,
make it our own kind of experience.
yeah, and
I'm sure that's what iHelp did with the 2-hour sets, right?
yeah, absolutely. We had an idea of 4, 5, 6 songs that we wanted to hit, but there were plenty of times where we would start on one song or one phrase, and before we know it, the 2 hours is over.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
at least that's how it felt. And then IHOP was recorded live 24/7 as well, so we could go back and um, listen to prior sets, and um, that's how a lot of worship songs were created, something, a
Yeah.
spontaneous phrase coming out, and you repeat it literally for 2 hours, different dynamic, different flows, different feels. Um, and then going back and listening to it, you can turn it into a song. Um, and what I loved about IHOP was each individual block of time that we played was its own separate entity. We never tried to recreate a feeling. Even something was so powerful and everybody was moved and the walls literally shook. The next time we played, we didn't try to recreate that. We tried to leave room for what the spirit was going to do next. Um, and I think a lot of places, a lot of modern churches, the music is so structured, and it has to be for time. And the a lot of churches are so big, they're running 3, 4, 5 services, and everybody's got to get in and out of the parking lot. Um, but just not chasing what
Yeah.
the spirit did previously, and just allowing moves for new
Yeah.
moments.
So one thing you said, right, was, and this is true for, I think if every musician was honest, if they would they would they would agree to it, that as musician, especially who play on a team, not uh, just not like a musician on the weekdays, but stepping into church on Sundays, but especially with worship musicians, it's a little distracting the first song, the first minute, or at least I find myself more easily distracted with the worship team sometimes, whether they are perfect or whether they are good or any interesting note that pops up. Right, I feel like I have to quiet my mind. I have these five people creating awesome music on stage is. And I'm trying to read it and right follow along from a musical standpoint, right? I know you said as a drummer, hearing another drummer, one of the loudest instruments on stage, as opposed to bass or guitar or keys, right? It's probably uh, more distracting for you, right? How do you? Is that true for you? And how do you deal with?
Uh, that is very true. I have a very unique style to the way that I play. Very simple and in the pocket. Try to play to the song. And but I love very technical drums. I don't play very technical drums, but I love very technical drums. Um, and so just seeing a drummer who may be more technically proficient than I am playing parts that I wouldn't even have thought of, I get excited and amped up, and hey, that was really cool. And I lose sight of the worship aspect of it. I definitely am guilty of doing that. Um, and even confession time. I've sat in churches where I've had these moments where I'm like, I could have done that differently. I would have done that better. You know, um, and it's not. I have to remind myself that it is not about that at all. Um, I I love times that and now I do. I had to work myself into it, but now I love times when I take a break from playing and somebody else is behind the drums. I get to sit with my wife, which we never get to sit and worship together. Um, and I've probably the last 5 or 6 years, I've gotten a lot better about getting out of my own head and just releasing everything to the Lord. Like, thank you for allowing me to be fed, uh, and and not letting my cup run empty. Um, it is a blessing to me now to get to sit with my wife and children during worship. Um, I love being on stage. I love worshiping through playing drums. I would do it every Sunday if I could, but I think the Lord is smart enough to know that my spirit needs a break and I need to be fed too. And it took me probably 30 years to realize that He was right.
Yeah. Me too, man. I just love music. If there wasn't in church, I wouldn't. You know, I'm sure you did too. I had multiple bands. I had multiple bands. I just love the craft of just making music. Which is why I love my time at Vintage, where we got together and we acted as a band, and not. We just came on stage, and I know you always come up with some ideas that while you were practicing, not only for drums but maybe for guitar or other people as well. Because and then I would come up and I would have some input on, like, I think this would be a cool part, and that's the beauty of it, right? We using our God given talents to make music, and I love that's the kind of environment that I prefer and I really love.
Mhm.
But if I'm not unable to get creative and put my heart and soul into it, but I love that part of our time during Vintage, where you would come up with parts as well for other
I
musicians.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that. One of the struggles of us being a smaller church, um, is finding musicians. We've had seasons of, incredible. Everybody who plays up here is absolutely incredible. Well, we've gone through long stretches of not having electric guitar. We're in one of those stretches now. Um, it is such a treat when you get to come and play electric guitar, um, because it's something that we miss and we lack, and I love getting to play off of each other.
yeah,
Um, um, I feel you there. Adding another musical element changes um, changes the whole room. So
yeah. So so when you get a set list, right, as a drummer, how do you prepare? Like, yeah, just maybe if you can just run through, like, in a minute, right, from the
Mhm.
moment you get the set list. What's your path to Sunday?
so um, I absolutely just I love worship music, and it's what I listen to most of the time when I'm driving to and from work, and I have an hour commute, so I'm listening to at least 2 hours of worship music every day. When we create the set list for the following week, um, I'll run those songs, listening to them, for the first 2 days, and just get that spirit of what the theme of those songs are. I won't actually start practicing any drum parts till probably the Thursday or Friday before. Um, I mean, there's been weeks that I haven't practiced at all. I'll drum along on my steering wheel. Um, but I've been playing worship music for 30 years, so um, uh, if it's a song that I've played 100 times, I don't need to sit behind my kit at home.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll think of all of the parts of the song, and if the spirit's moving and we go into starting this song, and the recording is, you know upbeat and loud and full band, but we're coming out of a move of the spirit that is, you know uh softer, more tender. How am I going to lead everything in to that next song and transition those things? So I think about all the different parts of the song. How would I play it, if we're, in a full energy, full band mode? How would I play it if, um, the spirit and the worship team leader is bringing us down into a tender moment?
Yeah.
And that can happen in between songs. It can happen in the middle of songs. And so I always have different versions of how I'm gonna play every part of the song in my back pocket.
Every musician will have a better experience if they play producer, because it's so fun,
Mhm.
not only producing themselves. I love producing myself and then producing the band as a whole. And I think everybody should have that freedom. which I think band development is really, really essential for worship teams. That they have the freedom to produce the band. Like, hey, teenager who's just picked up the bass guitar and playing for the third time, talking to the worship leader standing in the spotlight for like 10 years, like, hey, what if we did the down chorus? What if we didn't sing?
Yeah.
Right? Having that freedom as a band, and being able to produce yourself and help produce the band and make music, that would be so much more fun. So I know you've done that, right? But so are you practicing, like, as a guitarist? I'm not a drummer, right? But as a guitarist, for me, it's easy to practice parts. How this sounds interesting. I'm playing the chords, and I'm hearing a melody or a harmony, and I'm playing it on the guitar, and I'm like, oh, I can harmonize. I know a part. I know the chords, and I know a part. And here's another part that I can play. Here's a cool line. How are you? Is that the same approach for a drummer as well? Are there like parts that you're working on, a fill or a feel? How does that
For
work?
me, it's more of feel and song texture than it is actual parts.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I try really hard to not let things get stale. Worship bridge builds are all the same. So trying to mix them up and how can we give this more flair? How can we make this feel fresh? We've got 4 songs that all have the same bridge build. How do we make it not feel like the same song 4 different times? And that's a struggle through a lot of modern worship music right now. Um, we have our current bass player, Taylor. He does MDing through a talkback. He and I collaborate a lot on where we think things will go. Um, I am a singer as well. I don't sing from the stage, but I love to sing, and so when I'm in my car and I'm worshiping through the songs that we're going to be playing the next week, it'll just hit me, and I'll sing chorus of another song, and then I'll bring that idea on Sunday morning
Yeah,
in our rehearsal. You know, I love doing stuff like that.
yeah,
Let's think outside of the box. Let's do whatever we can to help
yeah,
keep things fresh. And I love that our everybody that we have as a team, we're all open to each other's ideas, and we
yeah,
we encourage each other to speak out and
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. I love that too. I love that because I think those kinds of that kind of organic worship can only be birthed from, not only maybe, but I think just doing it over and over again. I think it kind of relates to what we were talking about IHOP and doing the 2 hour session, right? I think when we listen to the worship song over and over again, that's our 2 hour session. We got over the first 30 minutes of just playing the track, playing it to the track, and now we're getting creative, So just it helps listening to the worship song over and over again. It's like seeping into your soul, and now you know the rules. And now you can start having fun. And I think that's when you use the gift that God's given to you
Mhm.
and use it back. It's much more fun. And I think he smiles on that. I think he smiles on any kind of music that glorifies him. So have you had any worship fails? I remember one. Did the shield collapse on you? Was that you?
Yeah, yeah.
Was that the biggest music? What? But I would say that is a worship fail, um, but it's something else that fell on you. Did you have like a worship fail where you goofed up, played the wrong song, and everybody started something else? Like, you don't have capos like us to have something like that. But and musically, what was the fail? And then to talk about the shield.
Yeah. So I played in Living Anthem, um, and we were playing. We were actually on tour. I don't know if you remember, um, 2008, 2009. There was a Christian group called Chris and Conrad.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. Um, and we went on tour with Chris and Conrad, and we played like 30 shows in 32 days. Uh, and we, uh, tour bus. the whole nine. It was the biggest tour that we ever did.
Yeah.
Um, and we opened up for them. But our set, we played to multi tracks, and our set was very structured. And the opening song had this uh, long kind of intro while the rest of the band came in, and I was triggering the tracks from behind the drums. The second song started very loud, all of us crashing in together, and the stage was dark. I was behind the drums, nobody in the audience could see me, and I was trying to trigger the first song, and I triggered the second, and this loud multi-track started instead of the lead in. And there was probably, uh, 2 or 3,000 people there. That's probably my biggest music fail.
What
Um
happened? Did the band just stop playing the second song, or what?
No,
You had to stop.
I stopped the track, kinda gave it, 2 or 3 minutes of awkward silence, and then I cued the intro. Um, but yeah, that was a embarrassing moment for sure, and we kept a book light, on my table, for my triggers after that. 'Cause I just in the dark hit the wrong button. Um, so it was Easter Sunday 3 or 4 years ago. Um, and we've our drum setup is a little different now, but we're a small church. I'm a hard hitting drummer. Um, and so I was completely enclosed in a cage. Um, the plexiglass shield in the front and all the foam behind and on top, and the top of the shield just collapsed into me in the middle of a song, choked out all the cymbals. Um, I just kept playing, and the guy running sound ran up and was trying to get the top of the shield back on. I did have a moment. I just thought about it. Um, I was high school playing a small local venue in a like a pop punk band. And the drums were up on a small riser. But the riser was tiny. Um, and the feet of my throne were right on the back edge, and I ended up kind of falling backwards in the middle of a song. The throne fell. I didn't get hurt, didn't fall all the way behind the stage. But we ended up stopping that song and starting it over again. That one was fun.
Awesome, Matt. Well, thanks for chatting, dude. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I know we played together quite a bit, but I never really heard your story. So it was really cool to sit down and chat with you and get to know you a little bit more and how you approach practice and learn some perspective from a drummer as well. Thanks, dude. Appreciate
It's
it.
been a pleasure, Conrad. Thank you.